Okay. All right. I guess I'm gonna start. All right. Let me once again, we're gonna start on the NFC East, and we're gonna do the Washington Commanders. And yes, guys, this is my team. Gonna be surprised at what I pick. But I'm fair across the board. And this is gonna surprise some people. But you know what? I'm solidified, and I think I'm gonna pick the correct record at the end of the year. Nobody is gonna be surprised. All right, so the Washington Commanders head coach Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron. He hasn't been good in the last 2 years. I know we won a division by winning 7 games, but we won 7 games again last year, and he just hasn't had a winning season. So I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, but the third year starts to get a little bit warm. And, the fans are kind of starting to get irritated. There's no long-term answer at the quarterback position. There's the league's trending towards offense, and Scott Turner's system seems outdated. I know the first preseason was supposed to be vanilla, but it was just the same old thing that we saw from the previous 2 years, which isn't good because it ended up in losing seasons. So this year looks like a win or bust, and it looks like a bust. So the offense, Carson Wentz is on his third team in 3 years. This is probably going to be his last stop, but he has to show out and improve. And even, it's a desperation move for both, for the Commanders and Wentz. It's just hard to see that if you can't win at Indianapolis, which is a better run organization with a better defense and a running game, how are you going to win an organization who is worse than the Colts? So the running backs, we're having issues there. Antonio Gibson fumbled. Doesn't seem like that issue is being resolved. He fumbled in the preseason game against the Panthers. And then the rookie running back, Brian Robinson, did come in. And right now, Brian Robinson is running with the first team. And Antonio Gibson is covering punts, and he's on special teams. And, that's how it is. He had fumble issues last year. So in the NFL, the one thing you can't do is not turn the ball over. You can't do that. That wins and loses games. The fumbling issue, okay. I mean, it needs to get corrected. Antonio Gibson's in his third year. So, hopefully he continues to fix the issue. The receiving core is pretty good. Terry McLaurin is a very underrated receiver. He got paid, which is well-deserved, and it took him too long to do it. And then they have Curtis Samuels and Jahad Dotson having an outstanding camp so far, which is good, but we'll see when it gets in the season. People have had good camps, and then when the regular season gets here, they don't produce how we want them to, but that's how the game is. Sometimes it's especially for rookies, it takes an adjustment period, just like in almost everything in life, right? So, the tight ends, they're decimated by injuries. I did like what I saw from undrafted free agent Amari Rodgers. He was good, but the O-line is the O-line is good, but the tight ends, I don't know what's going to go. To be honest, I don't know what's happening with the tight ends, man. It's not good. The O-line, Charles Leno, he's good. He's back with Sam Cosme. They picked up Trey Turner, who's dealing with some soft tissue injuries, which I don't like. I don't like soft tissue injuries. And so their job is to protect Wentz and then provide great holes for a running back. Hopefully they can continue to do that. Now, the defensive side of the ball is pretty good. Now, you got the 2D tackles that is good. Jonathan Allen, which is a Pro Bowler, and Deron Payne, who wants a trade, but I think he just needs to live up to his draft status, just plain and simple. Because if there was a trade market for you, you would have gotten traded. I think sometimes, like the Kareem Hunt we talked last week, I understand that you want to get traded and you're an NFL player, but if you haven't produced and there's going to be no market for you. That's just how the NFL is. They're pretty cutthroat. And they have, so on the end, you have Chase Young, who's going to start on the PUP list, but he should. He's recovering from injury. And then you have Montez Sweat on the other side, who just needs to be consistent. All right, now for the middle linebackers, you got Cole Holcomb and David Mayo. And David Mayo's he's decent. So is Cole Holcomb. I wish Cole Holcomb was a little bit more athletic. And they drafted Jamin Davis, and hopefully Jamin Davis now adjusts to the speed of the NFL. But it's hard to do that with linebackers. It should be easier for linebackers than it is other positions. So when a linebacker has a longer adjustment period, that's a red flag for me, especially an off-the-ball linebacker. It's just a red flag. It is what it is. Because most times linebackers adjust pretty quickly. But if you're not adjusting quickly in your first year as a linebacker, it's not like corner or receiver or quarterback. It's like, it's like running back. You should get it and go, So then we have the cornerbacks are decent, but I always say decent, but they start off the season doing good, and then next thing you know, they're just wide receivers are back there barbecuing, like they're having a cookout because our corners suck. But Kendall Fuller and William Jackson's been having a great camp so far. He says he feels great. Says he feels good. So we'll hope to see. And then we have the young guy, Cameron Curl, who showed up last year and balled out. And then Bobby McCain. So we just got to hope our defense is good. But right now we got a lot of injuries. And it just, I don't see us being as good as we were last year. Overall prediction, listen, we're seeing this trend in the NFL regarding quarterbacks and receivers. We did the right thing and we drafted a receiver, Jahan Dotson. The problem is our head coach is not adapting to the NFL, and that's might be the reason why we're not winning. Scott Turner's offense is vanilla. It runs a lot of screens. Now, listen, that worked when you had Cam Newton. But Cam Newton is almost a one-generational player, like 6'7", moving the way he did. He had a phenomenal run. But you don't have Cam anymore. And sometimes in life, when you're given a golden nugget and you build around that talent, especially in sports, when that nugget is gone, you get exposed. And that's what's happening with the Commanders. And I wish I was full of grandeur, of dreams, how every sports fan is at the beginning of the season, and say that we're going to have a winning record. But we're not. We're going to finish with the same record we did last year, maybe one better. I give us 8-9. Yep. Mo? Mo? All right. All right, Craig, go ahead. The Washington Commanders. Now, I know I shocked everybody.
No, I'm right here. My bad.
Oh, all right.
Bad.
I shocked everybody.
I don't know what's going on my screen.
Oh, all right.
I mean,
with the Commanders.
Head coach, I love Ron Rivera. I love his attitude, his style, but this year, is make a break for him in my eyes. Quarterback, I'll say this, and I've said this numerous times to people, and I get it. In big moments, it's going to matter, but I'm a firm believer in if Carson Wentz gives us 27-7, as far as 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and we don't make the playoffs, that's a problem for me. That's a huge problem for me. Because the NFC is not like the AFC. It's not that deep. So if he's giving us those type of numbers and we can't make the playoffs, that's a problem for me. It's huge. Running back wise, we got to change the turnovers, but I like our running back room. Receiver wise, I need for Curtis Samuel to stay healthy. I think if Curtis Samuel can stay healthy, we got enough receivers to make some plays. To tight end, a little shaky. Jordan Reed, I gotta see what's going on with him, staying healthy. But defense wise, if we get back healthy, I think we can be good. Secondary has always been a disappointment to me. Like secondary looked lost last year. I mean, we could say everybody went down in the defensive line, people got hurt, but secondary at times looked like they couldn't cover cold. But we talk about basic routes. We talk about people beating us on basic routes. I'm like, not even nothing that looked real, brought up, good call. I'm looking at us like that's some stuff we can run in youth league and people running wide open. I'm like, no, that's unacceptable. Offensive line, the offensive line wasn't that bad last year, but we can improve. For me, for a ceiling, I'm 10 wins or bust. I think we can win 10 games. If we don't win 10 games, I think it's like an automatic fire. Like Thanksgiving, Black Monday, he need to be gone. I love Ron Rivera, but with the roster we have, I think 10 wins or bust for me.
It's not happening. 8 wins, maybe 7.
I think you
look
at it though.
It's okay.
We won what was 9 wins last year with all that was going on? What was 9 wins last year or 8?
7.
And, all right, still with all that was going on, that was 7 wins. And hold up, and a lot of them losses wasn't blowouts. Like we was in them.
Okay, Mel.
I'm saying off of everybody being healthy. I'm looking at everybody being healthy. I'm looking at the whole situation. For me, it's 10 wins or bust. Like we don't win at least 10 wins, he need to be gone. He need to be fired next day. Black Monday, he need to be gone.
All right, Craig, what you got for the Commanders?
So as soon as they lose 8 games, he's got to go. That's because he's there. You're not getting 10 at that point. I do like Ron Rivera, obviously. I think he's a solid coach, probably like middle of the road coach. But I think this might be his hot seat season, just because of he's been there for a while. They haven't really had a lot of success. He was kind of like a higher profile coach coming out when he was let go by the Panthers. And he had that resume of going to the Super Bowl and things like that. So, but like his overall record in the playoffs is 3-5. So, I kind of would have thought he would have been better than that, but a little bit below 500. But I think he's a solid coach, man. I just think this might be his hot seat season. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going around in Washington with the owner and things like that. So it's a lot of distractions. They got people voting on the song and the mascot. Like, whatever, man. It's just things you got to be worried about for the season. But I think this is our perfect opportunity for Washington, though, because like everybody's been saying, the NFC is so down this year. But I'm high on Ron Rivera just for personal reasons, but I don't know if this is going to be his season to get it done. As far as the quarterback goes, Carson Wentz, statistically, he had as far as touchdowns and interceptions last year, he had a really good season. But a lot of those are not like deep down the field throws or anything like that. So he has to get better than that, and he has to win games. Obviously, the 2 losses last year at the end of the season to the Raiders and to the Jaguars obviously didn't get him into the playoffs. So he's going to have to do better in these key games, especially if they have a chance to go to the playoffs. So I kind of expect him to be. I mean, the Commanders don't really have any long-term ties to him, because if he has a bad season, he's gone. If he has a good season, who knows what they can do. But I don't know if I don't think this is going to be his last season. If anything, if he does have a bad season, I think he does with the Mitch Trubisky, goes as a backup and comes back next year or something like that. But I think he should have a decent season. He has a lot of good weapons around him. A lot of young guys. Terry McLaurin, obviously, they need to re-sign him. They got that done, so that distraction is gone. They re-signed J.D. McKissick. They went out and got the kid from Alabama, the running back, who in college never fumbled the ball, with over 500 carries in 3 seasons, I believe. Last year, he had like 250 carries or something like that and didn't fumble. So he's not going to really fumble the ball. I mean, that was obviously that's college. This is pros. People hit harder here and things like that. But, he just has that history. So if anything, with the fumbles that Antonio Gibson's been having, it's going to put a lot of pressure on him to produce. And the fact that he doesn't hit the holes, pause. That's no pause. He doesn't hit the holes like he's supposed to, like Ron Rivera just wants him to go. He just kind of pitter-patters his feet and stuff like that. That's not really going to work for Ron Rivera and the coaching staff. So they have to get that situated. Obviously, the other wide receivers, they went out and got Dawson from Penn State, I believe, and Curtis Samuel, who should be healthy, I would assume. He's always seems to be hurt. And then they got Brown from Carolina last year. So they have some guys that they can throw the ball to. Now Logan Thomas is out on the PUP list, so I'm not sure what his status is or when he's coming back. Seems like every year it seems like they get this. Washington gets former Panthers. They got 2 former Panthers, Andy Norwell and Trey Turner, who went on the Panthers last year, but they were former Panthers at one point in time. They went out and got those guys. They lost Brandon Sheriff. They also lost Eric Flowers. So that's some key losses for the offensive line, but they kind of replaced them a little bit. So kind of maybe balance itself out a little bit. On the defensive side, they lost Matt Ioannidis. He was okay, I guess. I mean, he's in the Panthers with the Panthers now, but he should be okay, I would assume. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of his, but the secondary, the secondary is what the secondary is. William Jackson was highly sought after last season. They went out and got him. They lost Landon Collins, who really wasn't a factor to me, I don't think. Anyway, so they still have what's the other cornerback name? Is it
Fuller, William Jackson?
Is it Will Fuller?
It's Kendall Fuller.
Kendall Fuller. I said Will Fuller. Yeah, Kendall Fuller on the other side. So they have decent corners. I think the linebackers is probably, especially with Davis being as high of a pick as he was and him not producing. I think they said now he's playing his natural position that he played in college. So maybe he'll feel more familiar with it and he'll be able to produce. But what I've been hearing on the radio, he hasn't been still. So, it's still a work in progress for him. But as a first round pick, you obviously want him to be ready like day one. So you mentioned Chase Young being on the PUP list as well. He's going to miss at least miss week 1. So that's one key guy who had a down year last year, who I know wants to come back and really prove that he was worth that second round or that second overall pick a couple years ago. The defensive line though is one of the best in football. When healthy, they have a lot of guys now. They can't pay all these guys, so this might be the last year for all 4 of them being on the same team together. But they make it work this year. And if the defensive line can get pressure, not like last year, but the year before last, where they were really, really good defense. If they can get pressure on the quarterbacks, then the safeties are and the corners and the linebackers really ain't. I mean, you got pressure hitting the quarterback all the time. You really don't need corners to really play like a top 5 cornerback, a top 5 secondary, or the linebackers to play like a top 5 second linebacker core. So I think Washington's in a good position to make a run. I just don't think they're going to be able to get it done. I think Carson Wentz is going to probably lose some games for him. I think the defense is probably going to lose some games for him, especially if the front 4 is not getting enough pressure. And I have Washington finishing. I have them at 8-9. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 7-10 like they did last year, but I think they can go 8-9.
All right, Coy.
All right. When it comes to Commanders, with the coach, I think Ron Rivera was exactly what they needed at that time. He was a calming influence during a massive state of chaos. But Dan Snyder is still there. That chaos is still there. Although I do agree with you that James, that the heat is starting to pick up on his seat right now. I do wonder if Snyder's troubles may not buy him a little extra time that he may not normally get, especially with Congress getting involved. I don't know if Snyder would want to rock the boat in the front office, in the coaching staff, but we'll see how that all plays out.
Good point.
Offensively, we'll see if Turner and Norwell can fill the void left by Brandon Sheriff in the middle of that offensive line. I think they could have a decent offensive line. I like Charles Leno. I think it was a smart move to lock him up on for another few years. Personally, I wish the Colts would have nabbed Leno instead of Eric Fisher to be left tackle last year. Terry McLaurin, I think I'm as high on as James is. He is a legit number one wide receiver in the NFL. But we'll see what production they get behind him. You got Samuels, Brown, Sims, Dotson. There's plenty of talent there, but there's youth. And then with Samuels, it's just the ability to be on the field. Just a lot of question marks. As James kind of touched on, we'll see what the running back room can provide for them this year. Gibson, I think, excels out of the backfield as a receiver, and that's not really Carson Wentz's game. So I think he could actually kind of lose some snaps. Could be an interesting trade piece for a team like Buffalo, perhaps, that might look at a running back and see that they could maximize a guy's like that potential. Then that brings us to the quarterback. Having spent last year watching Carson Wentz, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective. Sounds like James may have started listening to me a little bit and starting to come around a little. Look, the guy has prototypical NFL size for a quarterback. He is exactly what you want measurement-wise. He has a cannon of an arm. I just don't know that he has it between the ears. There was locker room friction on his way out of Philly, and he landed in his best-case scenario with Frank Reich in Indianapolis. Last year, his stats on paper looked pretty good. 27-7, 3,500 yards, but that was really misleading. I think he played really well to start the year in Indy. He kept them in games when the defense struggled out of the gate, but his play regressed as the season went along. For me, the single biggest indictment against Carson Wentz was Frank Reich's play calling down the stretch, because Frank Reich has always preached that you have to throw the football to win in today's NFL.
Yes.
And Reich called the last month plus of the Colts season like he was afraid to put the game in his quarterback's hands. I would also say Chris Ballard is one of the most prepared GMs in the league, and he moved on from Carson Wentz with absolutely no backup plan. Yeah. And that speaks volumes for coming from a guy like Chris Ballard. And I'll say Carson Wentz is an extremely stressful watch. Stephen Holder, now of ESPN, put it best when saying that Wentz makes the easy stuff look difficult. I think there's no question he's a massive talent upgrade from Taylor Heineke. I just think it's to be determined how much of a production upgrade he will be at the end of the day. Defensively, as Craig pointed out, they've got one of the most talented defensive fronts in the NFL. Everyone has something to prove. Chase Young coming off an injury, Payne trying to get a second contract or find a job for next year. All that. William Jackson was their big signing last year, and he didn't live up to the money, so they really need him to bounce back, and it sounds like he is so far. We'll see if he can continue that. And they desperately need Jamin Davis to play like a first-round pick for them at linebacker. You can't invest that highly in a guy like that and just get nothing. I think the unit will rely on that front four to disrupt the quarterback and make life on the back end a lot easier. The talent's there for them to do it. We'll just see if they actually can bounce back and provide that production that we saw 2 years ago. Overall, it's going to be a much discussed season for the Commanders. I mean, they're in the NFC East, and it gets an absurd amount of attention across the NFL as it is. And the plight of Carson Wentz has gotten a ton of media attention the last few years on top of that. I think if how the team president handled Carson Wentz getting some fair questioning from a reporter is any indication, I think things could get a little bit ugly in DC. I know James had been up to today been saying all the same stuff that I myself said of Carson Wentz last year, with all the hope and optimism. And look, Frank Reich did get significantly better play out of him than what he showed in Philadelphia his last year. It just sounds like Wentz doesn't always listen to his coaches. And then you add in that he rubs guys the wrong way in the locker room. Not everyone had negative stuff to say about him, but nobody really had praise for him, which is kind of weird. And then you look at, like, in Philly, you had very well respected guys like Darren Sproles and Alshon Jeffrey ready to fight him. In Indianapolis, you just had a really respected guy like Naheem Hines take a shot at Carson Wentz unprompted in OTAs. So that stuff, has to cause some concern at a minimum for Commanders fans. But look, I hope Wentz is a success. I don't dislike the guy. I hope he's successful. Hopefully, he ends up being a multi-year answer for DC, get him out of their QB purgatory. I mean, hell, I also want him to play so it helps upgrade the Colts draft pick that they're getting next year. But after watching him last year, I think he just has showed that he's not the type of guy who can throw a team that's struggling in a game on his back and carry them to a win. And if everything around him is going well, he can help a team win. But if your team is struggling out of the gate, he's not going to turn your fortunes for you. And when you add in all of the chaos going on around that franchise consistently with Dan Snyder, it just feels like an uphill battle for the Commanders this year. I do think they have a fairly favorable schedule, but I think they go, like you guys, 8-9 this year.
I know, reality hit, Corey and Craig, reality hit. After watching that preseason game, it's like, you know what? I've been drinking my own Kool-Aid.
I heard one of the Colts bloggers raise a really interesting point about last year. And, Wentz broke his foot, like, second practice at OT or of camp, missed all of camp, all preseason. Had Wentz played that whole time and stayed healthy, would the team and front office soured on him quicker?
Damn, maybe. That's a good point.